Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Testing, testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Does it work? Type 1 if it works. Going public. Thank you. Hello. Thank you for joining. I think I figured out the problem here. Okay, we'll give it some more time here for folks to join. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me now? Thumbs up. Okay, just let me know in the chat if you're able to hear me. Can you guys hear me right now? All right, very cool. Well, Happy New Year, guys. This isn't my first rodeo, but it's been a while since I've done a live chat. So, thanks for those of you who've joined so far. So, just wanted to leave it open ended. Just any questions that you all have, any updates on price of Bitcoin or like MicroStrategy or even any of the Bitcoin miner plays, as well as, we can talk about any other stocks that you all believe have potential here. But first off, let me perhaps just share on my screen. So just let me know what your questions are, and I'd love to go through any questions or requests that you guys have. But for now, I'm going to share on my screen here. So let me just, for a quick second, just pull up. All right. So just looking at price of Bitcoin. So right now we're at 95,000. So I think what we're seeing here is a good sign so far. However, we've seen just the fluctuations with Bitcoin. But I think if we can continue to hold that 95K, I think that's really going to show whether that's going to add more potential for like MSTR and like the miners. But let's take a look here. So here we're looking at the rainbow charts, and let me just stop sharing and see how the streaming works here. Okay, sound is on. Okay, so here's a question from Don. Thanks for asking and joining, Don. Here, hi, do you think we will see an extended Bitcoin bull run this cycle? So before I go into my assessment, um, thoughts from anyone in terms of what you see when it comes to the Bitcoin bull cycle? Do you guys feel like we're at that end point or it's barely starting? And what's your take? Okay, so let me just share here on the screen what my take is. Just with that question, just you may have seen this visual here. We're looking at Bitcoin rainbow price chart indicator, and where we currently are right now, it's telling us that we're in that accumulation. We just got past that buy phase, but we're still in that accumulation. It's still cheap. I don't think Bitcoin bull cycle has ended yet, especially because this is a key indicator here. This vertical line that you see. Remember the time when we had the Bitcoin halving that happened this year in April? It's only been a couple months past that time frame. When you look at the prior events, that Bitcoin halving event, it took okay. So just here, that was May 2020. That was April 2021. So a year out from that halving was when we saw that that bullish run. So if we're going based on historical trends, it's sometime around April where we can potentially see the top off. Now, the prior halving cycle, 2016, it took even longer, right? July 2016, December 2017. So that was about, I'd say, 15 months until we saw the topping point. So I really do think that because we've only gone past by like 7 months. We're only like less than halfway through, I think. Your thoughts are on that? I think that overall, what we screen is black. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that it says screen's black here, and I was like, okay, so now can you guys see? Okay, I think I was sharing this here. So what I was saying here is the rainbow cycle. I think overall, just high level here, we're at that point where I think we're still at the bottom here. We haven't really got that full gear kick in with Bitcoin topping off yet. So because that halving happened not too long ago, it's only been a couple months since that time frame. So I do think that okay, still showing oh, black again. Okay. Shoot. Yeah, doing this live stream, I had to download Google Chrome. I typically use Safari, and I okay, so it's back to normal, but as I share screen, it's telling, okay, I want to do entire screen. To share your screen, allow screen recording for Chrome in system preferences. Okay, so I have to go to system preferences. Okay, so I'm not really tech savvy when it comes to all of this. Okay, so I think I just fixed the problem here. All right, so this should do it. Okay. Open system preferences. One moment. Let me just make sure I have things set up correctly. All right, I think we're good here. Blackboard with chalk. That should do it. Well, I mean, I went to school in high school where we had the projector screen, and then the teacher would use markers and then spray it down and clean the clear sheets. I don't know if that was a time when you all went to school or that was before that. But let me try to share screen now. To share, allow screen recording. Okay, please bear with me here. But let me know what your comments and questions are. Hopefully I can answer that without sharing on my screen right now once I figure this part out. All right, so yep, those days are truly gone, Katie. Okay, and then Don here, why is Bitfarms so beaten down this week? Do you think them moving headquarters to USA will make institutions buy Bitfarms? So we know that Bitfarms, it's one of those miners that most people are afraid of right now. I mean, at one point it got up to close to about $5, right? Bitfarms. That was right after Riot Platforms announced that they are, trying to buy out Bitfarms at like $2.30. I think that's where a lot of investors, retails really got excited with Bitfarms, and that's where the price started ramping all the way up. But I think just where we see Bitfarms right now, don't get me wrong. I mean, most of the miners have been underperforming. Bitfarms, I mean, alone with it getting up to like $3.50 right now at the $1.40 sub 150. I think that we saw huge underperformance in 2024, but I think when there's fear in specific companies like Bitfarms, that's where the money's at. I really do think that Bitfarms, even though they've gone down so much, I think that the stock is so undervalued. Again, Bitfarms, they're mining over 200 Bitcoins per month. I think that they're gonna really surprise a lot of people. Okay, so is this going to pump up? So that's question from Joey. So what uh, in what context are you referring to miners overall, or is this going to be like Bitfarms, or what company are you referring to? I'll be able to answer if you can just let me know which company you're asking about. Okay, question here from Katie. Question: will CLSK and other miners be profitable in Q4? So I would love to, at this point, be able to share my screen, but let me just see here. So Chrome tab. Huh. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out why I'm not able to share on the screen. It's frustrating, but overall, Katie, I think that's a really great question. And just looking at the last Q2, Q3 results, like with CleanSpark, it's been in the red zone, right? Q2, Q3. Just keep in mind that the Bitcoin started rising at around the time frame of November, right? We were consolidating at that 70,000 for like months, and it was up until the presidential election November timeframe when things started ramping up. So when you think about Q4 results, because that lands in October, November, December, that's when all the action took place. And I think that's where we're really going to see, estimates or actual reporting of earnings per share and revenue is really going to blow things out of the water. And we're going to see profitable results. And it's interesting because I think depending on when each miner announces their results, it's going to be all in different days and weeks. But I think that's going to be that stimulant. Let's say, for example, we have CleanSpark announce their quarterly results. They typically announce later than other companies. But let's say if a company like Iron reported positive results, I think that's going to cause a triple effect across many different miners where it's going to start running. Okay, and here we have Alessandro Tech. So CT, Mr. CT, thank you for joining. I mean, I know you have that contrarian perspective, but I'd love to, you know, just have this open, a discussion Q&A. Um, Mara 17 and Bitcoin over 95,000, dilution. So Alessandro, I get where you're coming from. You have more of that bear perspective, right? But let me just ask you a question. So why is it that big institutions like Vanguard, why are they loading up the boat with these big time miners like the big three? So big three would be like Mara, CleanSpark, and Riot. I mean, they're the top three hodlers, and they mine at the highest production rate. So why is it that these institutions are loading up if they think that Mara, for example, is going to continue going down? So let me know what your thoughts are there. But just feel free to ask any questions. I'd love to just go through more questions that you have here. So just continue letting me know what your questions are here while I try to figure out whether this works. Oh, William. Yes, thank you. I was wondering where you're at. You're the one that really got me going here, like to go live. So thank you. I appreciate you, William, for just, requesting for me to go live. So I appreciate the feedback that you're sharing here. So just please bear with me. I'm just trying to figure out how to get my share screen working. This isn't my I'm not too tech savvy with all of this, but trying to get this all started here. So let me just try to see if this works. All right, so I think there's more questions flowing in here, but let's see what the questions are. Hopefully I can answer all these here. So Don, are institutions loading up on miners or borrowing to short? That's a great question. There's talks about how the big time institutions, they're able to keep the prices low so that they can hedge and buy at a lower cost. I think it's dynamic, right? Because when you have loads of money, you can manipulate things, right? You have that influence over the market makers. And I think that's how these big time institutions are able to load the boat with these companies. Um, just with the recent months, we have like CleanSpark, Mara, Riot, the big three institutions like Vanguard and BlackRock. They've been consistently buying up Bitcoin these last couple of months here. So that is just explains that there is that conviction there. And I think a lot of the retailers, I mean, when you look at a normal bell curve, I think a lot of retails got very turned off by just what's been happening in the market, allocating their money into like other AI stocks. We see stocks like quantum computing, Rumble, Nvidia. There's like other different plays like Tesla. So a lot of shift in where the momentum is at, which is what retails really hope to see. They want to make those big quick bucks. But I think because the miners have been beat down so much, 2025 is really going to look positive. And I think that's where, we're going to see some big surprises here. Okay, so here's a question. So, do you have a price prediction for Mara in 2025? So, Matthew, thanks for joining and thanks for asking the question. So, in the context of Mara, just looking at their overall performance in 2024, so it's not uncommon for Mara to test that $30 range. We've seen Mara retest $30 like how many times? It's kind of like a yo-yo effect, right? But the key thing is, when you look at the 2022 through 2024, it's trending up, although the recent 3 months, or the recent like 5 weeks, it's been beat down. I think price prediction wise in Mara, we're going to see that retest of like $30. I think if and when Bitcoin breaks through that 120,000 time point, I think that Mara can easily retest that $30 range. There's that potential. I mean, it was $30 like how many days of trading ago. So I think Mara has that potential right now, currently at like $16-17. That 80% 100% gain is really going to come quickly here. So I hope that gives you more color, Matthew. Okay, so we have a question here from Scott. So what is Riot in CleanSpark roughly cost per coin? How many can they mine? So thank you, Scott, for asking that question. So based on my research, I think CleanSpark, because of their recent improvement in the fleet efficiency, so I think overall they're joules per terahash. So think of joules per terahash. The lower the number, the better. That's going to reduce your fixed costs or your cost expenditure, which would be like, cost for paying for your power energy. I think with them improving from like 19 to like 17 joules per terahash, that's really going to bring down their overall costs. I think for CleanSpark right now, fixed costs for Bitcoin, for each Bitcoin that's mined, is around less than $40,000. They have, like one of the latest devices, the S21 Pro miners, and in terms of how many they can mine over like 20 Bitcoins per day. And that's not factoring in the recent deployed hash rate. I think they're now at like less than 40 exahash. So think about what they announced back in November. They mined 622 Bitcoins. Now, in the context of Riot, so Riot, I mean, their goal is to scale up on operational efficiency. And with October and November's data, they were able to consistently mine 500 Bitcoins per day. And that's factoring in the fact that the Corsicana facility hasn't really scaled up yet. So they're still working in development. The structuring is still happening at Corsicana. So I think that's what we all have to consider. Now, hit the like button. Yes, thank you, Scott. And I just wanted to just thank you all. I see a lot of like common names here, where I get a lot of comments and questions through the YouTube videos. And I just wanted to call out William and others for requesting for me to do a live stream. And it helps me learn as well, and it helps me be able to provide my own perspective. I'm not the expert here, but it's just my interest in researching all of this right now and be able to share back. So here, do you personally think every pick that big institutions go with are the winners? They also need tax loss also. So Alessandro, yes, you have a point, right? I mean, institutions, they're not perfect, but they do have boatloads of money. And why is it that they have boatloads of money? Because their statistics, they have a higher probability of success than losing. So they have like computer algorithms. I'm sure they do have experts like financial analysts. These people, they live and breathe looking at data. They have software algorithms, and of course they have more of that inside scoop. that we don't know of. So I think institutions, for them to like invest billions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars, they should know their stuff before they make big moves like that. So I think they're just better than what we do here. And yes, you're right. They also need tax laws also, but the key thing is to, make money, pay taxes, and to lose and not even have to worry about taxes. So here, Katie, I'm with you. It's definitely hurting. I've been hurt as well, but in order for me to feel better, what I typically do is I just incrementally try to like buy some more shares, anything that I can acquire, even though, let's say, if it's not a big amount, at least you're still buying at the low point, and that makes you feel better on the days when things drop. So that's kind of the strategy that I kind of implement. Scott. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I got to say thank you to you, Scott. And, I appreciate that question that you had about Riot and CleanSpark. But I think a lot of what we're going to see heading into the new year is going to be different variables that will be factored in. Of course, we know rise in Bitcoin's really going to vertical launch these stocks here. But what's really going to come into play are like variables like fleet efficiency, hash rate. What else? Whoa! I just saw William. That's thank you, William, for that kind. I'm grateful for that. I didn't expect anything like that, and just thank you. That wasn't my expectation, but that's a very kind thing that you did there. Um, No, congratulations to you as well. And, I hope that this new year is going to be a year full of gratefulness and an abundance of joy for everyone, right? Because at the end of the day, even though we're all hoping to, have our gains, whether it's in finances, in health, relationships, faith with the religion you believe in, I think it's important that we all just, keep in mind that we savor the moments, like reflect back on the years and just enjoy life. And I think it's important that we take a moment to breathe, not try to rush things into the new year, and just kind of be hopeful for positive things. And it's not just, making money and all that, even though that's like the main thing that we're all focused on when we talk about price of Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, and miners. But I think that what's important is make sure you focus on your health, strength, whether you like working out. I think all of that's important too. Okay, so here's one thing here, Alessandro. I'm going to be short on Mara until they find way to have income to support their operations costs, or they will always dilute to keep the power on. So you got a point, Alessandro, and I respect you because I don't always want to look at it from a bullish standpoint. I think it's important to look at things from a broad scope, welcoming the contrarian perspective. So, I think one of the biggest things that we all worry about is like dilution, right? Dilution, of course, when we hear that, we don't like that because when we hear about dilution, that means that the share price is likely to go down, but that's not always the case, especially when companies are trying to expand their branding to make their name more known. I think what happens is that they have to do this, get their branding out there, market cap. The goal is to increase that. But you're right, though. Dilution is tough, and hopefully, we have less and less of dilution. But I think the rise in Bitcoin is really what's going to drive, the prices, of these miners up. Okay, good idea for the Q&A is to put the letter Q before each question so that when you scroll down, you can see. Yes, I think that will help. Yes, so just following what William has suggested here, if you know you have any questions, just putting a Q right before that, I think that would really help me be able to scroll and see what the questions are. All right. What other questions does anyone have? You know, I think just with, you know, price of Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is right now. Let's see where Bitcoin is. Okay, so I'm looking at Bitcoin right now. I wish I can share the screen. I'll figure this out at one point. It's hovering like right below 95,000. Okay, so then, all right, so here, Q from William. Do you think that this first week of January will bring a massive pump? So, William, you know, when it comes to, you know, investing, trading, right? A lot of what we say or think, all of that, you know, we're not perfect at guessing. And we have this tendency to make forecasts into what the future will likely be. But just to keep in mind that timing the market and all that, as much as how good we think we are, we're sort of making a wild guess, if you will. But in terms of whether that's correct or not with that assessment, I think we have to consider all of the things that are leading up to, you know, what's coming up. So when you think about ETFs, right? ETFs kind of just came into play just recently. I mean, what does that mean? So ETFs, right? Whether people like investing, passive investing into like QQQ, NASDAQ 100, we heard about MSTR getting involved, and with ETFs for Bitcoin, that changes the dynamics. And I think what that will do is that's really going to be like the driving stimulant to get these um, Bitcoin prices to reach a level that it's never reached before. You go back to like the last couple of bull cycles for Bitcoin, a lot of people really thought that Bitcoin is still speculative, right? But I don't think anyone, I mean, I'm sure there's more people out there that still think that Bitcoin's a joke, but now that you have, you know, ETFs, you really can't argue against that anymore. And the first week of January will bring a massive pump. I think how we're seeing Bitcoin perform, I mean, going from like, okay, so January 1st, 2025 today, the lowest point was at 92,000. Where we currently are right now, I think the sentiment is changing. It's bullish, but as we've seen with the last couple of days, there's been like heavy fluctuations intraday with Bitcoin where it goes one way, it goes down, and then all of a sudden it V shapes up right away. So I think there's been a lot of control with how things fluctuate with Bitcoin, but it's interesting to see the price of Bitcoin like holding up right now. Seeing that it's gone up, you know, close to that 95,000 marker. But I think that if we can break through that 95,000. It'll be interesting to see when the stock market opens tomorrow, like 6:30 Pacific time, to see where Bitcoin stands. If it gets up to like 96,500, I think we're looking in a more positive direction here, especially with all of the tax harvesting ending. I think that's really going to be the driving factor with Bitcoin. And again, we saw how fast Bitcoin ran up, right? Like from the November to the December timeframe, getting all the way up to like 108,000. So can you use? Okay, so I'm gonna go from top to bottom here. So I hope that answers the question, William. But I think overall, We haven't topped off with Bitcoin yet. 2025, we're still in the accumulation phase based on just having events. The top off typically happens at later points, especially after like having events. In this case, we had a having event in April. So Bitcoin topping off now doesn't make sense, because if it starts going down, then that means, miners, it's hard to have profits. Okay, so here's a question. So Matthew, if you had to choose one mining company, who and why? So that's a good question, because I think it really comes down to investment strategy, right? When you look at how these institutions are really choosing which miners they want to invest in. Institutions aren't really going to like put their money on like the extremely small cap mining companies, those innovators, those growth type of companies. They're gonna, focus more on like the established miners. So in this case, we have like Marathon Digital, we have Riot Platforms, we have CleanSpark. These companies, they're more established. They do have backing in terms of structure, meaning they can mine at a high throughput, and they have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And one of the interesting things when you look at companies like Riot Platforms is that they focus on having low debt on their balance sheet, which is why, Starboard just acquired a boatload of shares with Riot, and that's really going to change the dynamics. I think a lot of people are like, well, executives at Riot, they have a lot of bonuses, so there's a high cost, and they're not generating any positive return on cash flow. But when you think about it, with a new you know, um, angel investor like Starboard, they're really going to change the vision of that company, whether that's going to be shifting their business model to look more into the potential for like HPC AI. Things like that will be factored in. So it's really hard to tell which miner and why, but I do think that, the big three, because they got beat down so much for the last 5 weeks. I think CleanSpark, out of the three miners, they got beat down so bad. But with it dropping so low, I think that there's that possibility that it can just pop back up along with Mara and Riot. Okay, so Kalon, can you use Japanese? So I wish I can use Japanese. In fact, we had gone to Japan and Korea last year. Actually, just got back from like Korea again this year. We also visited Vietnam and Thailand. So when it comes to Japanese, I only know how to say "arigatou gozaimasu." That's the most I can say. Or Costco, like Costco. Those are like just the main words that I know when it comes to Japanese. Okay, and then here's a question from William. Do you think Mara can hodl as many Bitcoin as MSTR? So I think that's a great question. So recently we saw Mara get up to about, what is their market cap? They almost breached that $10 billion in market cap. It really depends, but I think that MSTR, they're going to be the king of Bitcoin. They got close to 500,000 of Bitcoin. Mara, current state, along with their two playbook plays from MSTR with the $2 billion loan, they got their overall Bitcoin count up to about 44,000, and that's also factoring in mining production as well. So each month they bring in, like a thousand Bitcoin per month. So 6 months from now, think about adding another 6,000 Bitcoins to their reserve, along with potential buying more Bitcoin. But I think that MSTR will remain as the number one company in terms of HODL. But overall, Mara has created that disparity. They're number one in the HODL right now. ranked number 2 as a North American company for how much Bitcoin is held. So here, I think, okay, and then, so here's a question. Okay, so I don't get why Mara used most of their offering all at once with average of 98K. Why not wait for strong pullback from Bitcoin? I just don't get Mara management. I mean, you have a point, right? Why not wait? But that's where we have that hindsight bias. And think about these approvals of the convertible note. It can only be approved within a time frame. It gets approved after like 3 days, and you're expected to do something with that money. And I think, given the fact that Bitcoin prices rise that much, that is what you have to factor in as well. Fair value of Bitcoin, and you're going to be using that money to buy Bitcoin within X amount of days. So, as much as you wanting to time the market, that's not what these big name companies do. That's more of what like retail investors do, along with like institutions, trying to time the market. But I don't think that's what companies like Mara and like Riot and others are trying to do when it comes to timing the market, waiting, and then buying at a lower cost. But you're right. I mean, buying now is much better than buying at like 98,000. But I think that's not much of a big difference, I would say, right? Because if you have conviction, then that means it's going to go up in the long term course, which I think is the focus that they have. Okay, so here, is there opportunity Mara a number one stock in 2025? So Kalon, looking at, I don't know if you've checked out like my videos, but I've been looking more at like seasonal trends. For example, looking at how miners perform each year. So like think about Mara or CleanSpark, for example. They both exhibit the same type of performance. So 2022, we had an extremely bad year. All of what was gained the prior year, 2021, all of that was wiped out. 2022 timeframe, and that was when Bitcoin went down, right? But 2023 followed by having an outperforming year, and then now 2024. Now that that's in hindsight, we saw underperformance. So just basing things off of seasonality, because we saw underperformance with the miners, I think 2025 is going to be a big year for uh, for the miners. So I hope that answers your question. Mara, definitely a potential number one stock in 2025. We saw what Mara did at one point, right? And that was like 2020, when it went up like from like single digits all the way up to $80. And I think people made, millions. I think people became millionaires from that. I in fact knew one person who became a millionaire because of Mara back in 2020. But I think because not everyone took profits at that time, I think people are still holding on to tomorrow. But because we saw those type of runs, that doesn't mean that they don't have that potential to do so again. And then a comment here from William. I think Mara will dominate. There are way too many big business investors scooping up Mara at these extremely low prices. So Kalon, how you get English skill? I want to brush English skills. So I think, just practice. I think practice will get you there to anything. I think your ability to type and all that, I mean, that's comprehended. So just keep practicing, man. And I think that you'll get better over time. Okay, so Bitcoin now at 94,000. So it'll be interesting to see how Bitcoin performs, if it goes up or down. Mara shorts 26%. I think it's hovering around that range. It slightly went up, but I've heard that there's like calls, February calls coming in. So it'll be interesting because I think shorts are going to have to like cover in that regard. So any other questions from anyone? And let me know if you have any feedback on what you would like to see in these live chats. Of course, I'd like to, share on the screen here. I'm kind of just, dialoguing because I'm not able to get my screen share going for some reason. And oh, finally. Okay, so now I just didn't click on the one thing and now I'm able to share on the screen here. So just looking at, let me know if you're able to see on the screen here. Okay, so I'm assuming that you're able to see on the screen here. So Bitcoin price, current state, with it being at, just looking, I think this is important that we look at the historical trends here. And I've been, posting this on the videos because I think it gives us color on how we see Bitcoin perform. Of course, we all have that belief that Bitcoin at one point is going to break through $1 million. That's expected, right? I mean, supply and demand, I think we all get that. You can't print or manufacture more Bitcoin. There's only 21 million Bitcoins in this world, right? A number of it's been lost. Satoshi, he holds on to a certain amount. We have like 60, 70% held by individual investors. That's broken down by like government, holding, countries, institutions, all of that. But just looking at this here, where it currently is at the, we passed that buy. We're in that accumulate still cheap time frame here. Eventually we're going to get into that still cheap zone, that yellow zone, HODL, and then we're going to start breaking into the more darker hues here. The FOMO starts intensifying. Is this a bubble? And then it's going to start getting into that, that deeper red zone here. And looking at the halving event, that vertical line there back in April. So we've only been a few months out, but if you look at the prior halving events, it was pretty spaced out in terms of time. And that's quite evident, right? Because now it's going to cost more for miners to mine. It's more difficult to mine. Supply and demand will kick in, right? I mean, it's more expensive. So we would expect that everything is relative in terms of price because it's more difficult. It's expected that the price of Bitcoin will rise. So we see the consistent spacing looking at post 2016 halving, post 2013 halving. There was some significant amount of time in between here, looking at like a year to a year and a half post that halving. So I think we're still in a premature state where Bitcoin hasn't really broken out yet. I think this is a really good visual just to see where we are in terms of Bitcoin trajectory. So a question here from William: do you think this rainbow chart will be broken out with Trump shilling Bitcoin? So I think because we got all of these new variables coming into play, for example, we have ETFs coming into play, right? We have now the upcoming president, having that initiative for the United States to start being the powerhouse, United States being the strategic Bitcoin reserve. What does that mean? So how is the United States going to be the powerhouse? Well, that really comes down to the big name companies like the big three and MSTR, right? I mean, this is all a race against China when you think about it in terms of like Bitcoin holdings. Let me just share on the screen here a different view. All right, so one moment here. All right, so just looking at just HODL count here, Mara has, I think this is a little bit outdated, but you have, Mara at like 44,000. You see Riot Platforms. Here it's showing less than 17,000, but I think there's more to that. Riot is now like at 18,000 or close to 18,000. There's a race between number three. Hut 8 actually use their loan money to acquire Bitcoin. They use 100 million and purchased Bitcoin with that, and now they're like at number three. But I think just recently with the exchange between Coinbase and CleanSpark, with that line of credit, I think CleanSpark just got an additional 1,200 Bitcoin. So now I think they're like at neck to neck with Hut 8 as the top three hodler at this time. But overall, like what I was saying, the United States, they're at a race right now to be number one in terms of hodl count from a country perspective, and number two country is China. So I think without these three big three miners along with other miners, if there isn't this disparity, that's really going to weaken the United States. So that's really going to add value to the US strategic Bitcoin reserve along with MSTR. So I hope that answers your question, William. Let me know if you had a different question. Okay, so here, what could price target for Hut and Bitdeer be this cycle? So it's interesting because when we look at, let's just take a look here. Okay, so let me just pull up some charts here. Hmm. I think with overall, just with Hut, let me just share on the screen here. Okay, so hopefully you're able to see on the screen. Okay, so the question regarding Hut here. So I think for Hut, just going year performance, they've done so well. Back in September, they were like at $8, and then they ran all the way up to like $31, and just recently, they're now at that $20 range. Definitely a workhorse. When you look at Hut's performance, I think all of this was attributed to their HPC AI platform and speculation with Meta potentially working with them. But I think Bitdeer and Hut 8, those two stocks, they were like the workhorses in 2024. Um, I'm currently not invested in Hut 8 or Bitdeer. I think a lot of what drove the price up for Hut 8 and Bitdeer would be the speculation, and on top of the the revenue that they're generating from AI cloud-based service, which is great. That's really the benchmark for other miners to explore, especially when the cycles of Bitcoin will not be as bullish as where it currently is. So I think having that foresight vision to see how else to bring revenue in, Bitdeer and Hut 8, they've performed very well. But to your question, how high will Hut 8 go? I think because it went up from $8 all the way up to $31 so quickly, I think that's one thing that we have to, be mindful about. Similar to what we saw with MSTR just recently, I think that because it's on a downward trajectory, um, it may go down even further. Knows how low it can go, or will this, mean that it has the potential to go up? Um, I don't have an answer, but I think if when Bitcoin does go up to 130,000, we might see, you know, um, the companies that have been lagging behind, and that's like the big three miners, CleanSpark, Mara, and Riot. Hut 8 and Bitdeer, they've done so well in 2024. I think it's highly unlikely, not saying that it's not possible, that they don't have that same workhorse performance that they did in 2024. Okay, so here, which miners do you think will fall out of top 5? Okay, so that's an interesting question. So I think Jason, thanks for joining, my friend. I hope everything in Taiwan is great right now. I know you got sick over there. Um, you know, um, Jason, yep, we've actually met in person, and he's actually been to my wedding. So, JMC, just shout out to you. I hope you're doing well in Taiwan right now. Um, getting your health back in place. Happy New Year, and yeah, I'm just trying to get this live stream going again. Thanks to William here, who who suggested that. So as for miners that will fall out of top 5, I think that's an interesting question. But right now, we have, I think, there's, you have like Cipher mining, you have, Cipher having the next big HODL account, but we haven't been hearing much about Cipher. But I think there's value in like Iron and Core Scientific. A lot of, those companies are really gaining on price appreciation as well. Even though the last 5 weeks have been a bloodbath, Iron has been hit really bad as well with the price. But I think the main focus though is, I think the big three miners, they really have that potential to really outperform heading into this new year. Okay, so which miners are your top 5? So current state right now, based on price value. Okay, let me just try to bring up the charts. I think that would. Okay, so my top miners right now, let me just share on the screen here. Okay. Okay, so question. So Which miners do you think will give us the best bang for our buck over time? So right now, it really depends on your stomach for volatility. Okay, so the top 5 miners, I would say, heading into 2025, I would say, and I'm not going to rank this by what I think is the top versus what's not the top. The top 5 miners that I think have the biggest bang for your buck, if you invest based on the current price, would be, and this isn't in the order of like the best versus the not the best. If they're in the top 5, I think these top 5 do have value here. So I would say Mara, Riot, CleanSpark, that's 3. And 2 more I would say is Iron and Bitfarms out of those 5 miners. And it looks like here, Gary, selling Bitfarms at a certain time point and buying XRP. Congratulations on that. XRP, XLM, Stellar Lumens has just done so well recently. Bitfarms currently, everyone is like turned off by Bitfarms, right? But keeping in mind that they mine at like 250 Bitcoins per month, that's pretty huge numbers. And I think that's why Riot saw the value in Bitfarms. So I do think because they dropped down so much, I mean, getting close to like $4, dropping down to like $1.48 now. I mean, you can easily get like a 1x, 2x in the near term very soon. But I think overall, Mara definitely undervalued, $16 right now. Such a steal. It retested $30. We've seen that performance many times with Mara. $16, huge oversold. RSI is at its low point right now. Now that we're heading into the new year, I think there's going to be a lot of circulation into the miners. We saw that, especially with the top off of like MSTR. I think Mara, they're number 1 in HODL. They're number 1 in mining per day. They're number 1 in percentage of institutions, about like 60, 70% owned by institutions. They're mainly number 1 in everything, including renewable energy. So that just explains that Mara has that potential to just really ramp up based on the current price. So hash rate for Mara, I think they're at 50 exahash right now. So that's best in the market. And CleanSpark, they just announced that by first half of 2025, they're going to use their convertible note to build their hash rate up to 50. So they have that booster target along with Iron. That's why I think Iron has that potential as well. And it's been just going down so bad recently where I think there's so much potential there. And yes, you're right, Jason. Mara made a lot of millionaires. I mean, that run up with Mara, but where it's currently at $16, we see that negative correlation. Bitcoin going up, reaching its all-time high, but then why is it that we see an underperformance in miners? That's something that's very difficult to explain, but we will see a reverse trend, positive performance heading into 2025. Yep, you're right here. So 50 for now, but we'll be 58 soon. I agree. Gary, the problem is Riot having 20% in the company. Bitfarms is forced to dilute. Yeah, it's interesting. With Riot holding 19%, I know Bitfarms isn't the greatest when it comes to, their overall strategy. Like they overpromise and underdeliver. But the fact that they're able to mine, Bitcoins by the hundreds, I think if and when Bitcoin breaks through that price point of, 120, 130,000, they're going to be in the green zone as well. And what's gone down very quick with Bitcoin, they're going to, have that quick run up. That's why I think there's value in there, but that's only if you have the stomach for volatility, especially when it comes to investing in a company where the share price is at less than $2. But at one point it was close to $4 there. So Coyote, what about the micro miners like DMG just made a new 52-week low? The company has a strong hodl but no growth. So I don't have an answer to that, but I'll have to research more on that and just dig a little deeper. If anyone has any insights on DMG, I would love to hear more about it, but maybe just providing more context for Coyote there. Yeah, the shorts have been heavily manipulating the miners, and just recently we saw that with MicroStrategy as well, right? And I was making that assessment as well, especially when Citron announced that shorting on MicroStrategy. I think that really drove down the price of MSTR when it got up to like $550. So because we see shorting in MSTR and the miners, how much longer can it go, right? I don't think it can go that much longer. Eventually, miners or shorters are going to have to cover. Here's the thing with shorts: when there's shorting involved, that's when the people have to. That's when they have to cover at one point before the share price goes up. Let's say if the share price catapults up, that means shorts are really going to take a big loss because they're buying shares at a much higher price, which defies the whole strategy that they had in the first place. But you're right, William, the shorts have been holding the miners down. Okay, so Jazeri, thanks for joining here. MSTR was at 360 when it was 94K at the beginning of December versus 20. And yep, you're right. MicroStrategy, so almost down 20% for the month of December. I wonder if this is due to dilution or shorts. So I think it has to do with technicals, technical analysis. One thing I learned, investing in the stock market is while we should factor in fundamentals, that's basically how the company is performing with its finances and all of that. Even when the finances look good, it doesn't line up or it doesn't add up, like the math is incorrect. That's where technicals really come into play. When a share price just runs up like by 800% year to date, when the relative strength index is like at like 80, 90, that's an indicator that it's overbought. And there's going to be, big time institutions, retail investors placing bets against MSTR. And that's what happened, especially with that Citron news back in November, a couple of weeks ago. That's what really drove down the price, and people got scared. They took profits with MSTR after that run up. Just keeping in mind that MSTR ran up by about 800%, while Bitcoin ran up 100%. So natural default, people took profits after that news came out. So thanks for your question there. DMG did 50x in 90 days. That's amazing. Definitely some solid gains there with DMG. I'm going to have to research more on that. So Gary, I'm also $5,000 into Hive as well. Their move to United States will be much better for them. And I've been hearing a lot about, Hive. To be honest, I haven't done so much research on Hive, but I think that, you're in the right place with that investment. and especially moving to North America, because Trump is a big proponent of North American miners and companies. That's really going to benefit Hive. So hopefully Hive goes up and you'll be able to capitalize on that. And Hive, I think their HODL count, I mean, they're pretty good. They have, close to like 2.5 thousand Bitcoins on their reserve. So um, they're definitely, a mature company. And with the price of Bitcoin, I mean, right now at like 94,815, I think we're beginning to see Bitcoin go up. It'll be nice to see Bitcoin hover above 95,000 as we, have the opening of the stock market tomorrow. That'll be good. But let me know what your thoughts are, like between, Riot, Mara, CleanSpark. Which company do you think has the potential for the biggest gains here? With Mara being at, the high $16, CleanSpark at like $9, Riot at like $10. What do you think? So here's a comment from William. CleanSpark, I think, will get to the numerous 3 spot behind Mara. So you're right. I mean, they're like racing neck and neck right now with HUT 8 in terms of HODL count. I think getting beyond that 10,000 marker, they're ahead of the game right now. Just to kind of show you the HODL count again. So all right. So here I'm showing on the screen Bitcoin holdings of public miner companies. So here you see Mara, number 1, Riot, they're number 2. I think CleanSpark, they're somewhere around that number 3 zone right now. I think as soon as they announce their mining production for December, they'll have about 700, a little less than 700 Bitcoins mined, and that's going to put CleanSpark at number 3 in terms of number of Bitcoins on their balance sheet. And on top of that, their fleet efficiency, they have that AI variable going on, which is one of their strong points here. But with CleanSpark as a pure miner play, that dependency is really going to come in based on the price of Bitcoin, if and when it goes back up. Okay, and then Mara will dominate. They have BlackRock, Vanguard, Morgan Stanley alone at 59. When it comes to, company maturity, Mara is number 1 for a reason. And I think BlackRock, Vanguard, Morgan Stanley, they know where the money's at. And we've seen how fast Mara can go up, and it can go up very fast. It can, go down very fast, which is what we saw from like $30 down to, just recently to $16. But I think that overall, all in all, Mara, because it dropped so much just recently, it's going to retest that, that $30 sometime in January, February, hopefully. So CleanSpark, $65. That'll be very tasty. I think, if there will be some jets that'll be created with like the logo CleanSpark for retail investors, definitely. But where it currently is right now at like, the $9 price point, I think CleanSpark, we even saw that like at $3 and it ran all the way up to like $24 in 2024 March timeframe. It ramped up. It was like one of the leading Bitcoin miners at the beginning of the year of 2024, but towards the end of the year, it's been bleeding out. But I think CleanSpark will have its moment to shine again. Mara, I mean, the sky's the limit. with MSTR making that run of like, $550, I think a lot of profit takers, they moved their money into like companies like quantum computing. We saw like QUBT, Soundhoon, SOUN. We saw Nvidia, Tesla. A lot of these companies did really well, right? And most of, why are the other sectors doing? Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience. For some reason, the the page it was buffering, so I was able to revive it here. So let me see if I can just pull up some charts here. I think that would give some color on a couple things. Okay, thank you. Yep, thanks, William. So I'm just going to pull up a chart when we look at an overall charts here. So let's take a look at Mara, and let me know if you want to look at any other charts, when it comes to a stock here. But let's just look at the 1 month. So where we currently are at like $16, if we scale back out, just alone here, November time point, we had that $30 run up. And you see here, lower lows within the last couple of weeks here. However, when we scale back out, around September timeframe, that's when a lot of the miners were bleeding out. That low point of like, $13. And of course, during that time, Bitcoin wasn't at the price that it is. But that run up from like September to November, that's within a matter of like a couple of weeks where it went up. So for it to currently be at 16, I think we're going to start seeing that retest coming up as we head into the new year. I think just with the continuous bleed out, December 5th, about, less than a month ago, we were hovering, around that $30 range. So it's gone down by less than 50% already just within a matter of weeks. Here's definitely an opportunity to dollar cost average down. I don't know if your cost average is high or if you're thinking about miners. Mara, it's a safe bet when it comes to considering mining as an investment commodity or a strategy to your toolbox for investing. $16 is definitely much better than buying in at like $30 or like $25. Definitely undervalued. It's just that psychology. Whenever a stock is like down, people are less prone to invest. But I think the avid investors, they know what they're doing by dollar cost averaging down. So in fact, Mara, CleanSpark, I actually, continued dollar cost averaging in the recent trading days, especially during the down days. I definitely think that 2025 Mara is going to be a trending stock here. As we look at CleanSpark, for example, let's take a look at CleanSpark. So just looking at December, right? December 5th, $16. I mean, and where it currently is here, like at $9, that, I mean, it almost got to the point of like sub $9, right? High $8. So dropped nearly half within a matter of like weeks. But because it's been oversold, I think what goes down very quickly within a matter of weeks of trading, and of course we had some holidays in between. CleanSpark, I think, with it being the top number 2 mining producer as well as a top number 3 hodler, we're going to hear a lot of news from CleanSpark. Especially when Trump comes in a couple weeks here, and I think it's really going to favor CleanSpark here. We scale out 3-month zone. back in mid-November, around that Trump time, when we heard the news about Republicans winning here, it ran up to $18. And what's happened since then? Huge sell-off, huge market manipulation. Shorts are attacking, understanding that that run-up was quite fast. So there's heavy manipulation going on. But I think from a fundamentals and technicals analysis standpoint, RSI being this low, I think we're going to see that run up with CleanSpark. So definitely undervalued here. I mean, how much lower can it go when you're thinking about, you know, risk standpoint? I think there's much less risk by investing in, a company like CleanSpark here. Let me just stop sharing and see what the questions are, because I'm not able to see on the screen here. Okay, so just going back to the oh no, my screen was black. Okay, so that sucks. So you weren't able to see anything, huh? I apologize there. Okay, so let me try to share again here. Okay, now we're able to see. Gosh, I was like looking at the charts thinking that everyone is able to see my screen, but okay, yep. Well, we're gonna soon enter a golden era come January 20th, William. So I think great things are gonna come. Shorters are taking advantage of of Trump not in the White House yet, but very soon we're gonna see these miners trend up. Okay, so just overall CleanSpark back in what, November timeframe, it was at $18, that top point there. 18 was at that resistance level. So it dropped off nearly by like 50% just within a matter of weeks here. So from a investment standpoint, is it less risky to dollar cost average to buy in now than when it was at that FOMO time frame, when it was like hovering at that $18? I think because it's currently at this $9, if you're considering investing, I'm not trying to like pump up a stock or anything like that. My goal is to make money on my own and be able to share similar insights as well. And I'm not doing it because I'm trying to pump up the stock or anything, but I think that there's definitely value here, especially because it's single digits. Buying here at like 18, I mean, that's way more expensive. And how much more will you get if it goes up to like 25? I mean, that's much less than buying it now and seeing it go up to 25, right? So the positive return on proceeds, that percent gains, will be much different once it retests that 18 zone. I do think that CleanSpark, what we saw as we scale out here, just year to date. Okay, just to make sure that I'm able to see my screen here. So we do realize that CleanSpark $1.25 or close to $25 around that February, March, April timeframe. A lot of people were talking about CleanSpark, especially with that huge run up from like $6 all the way to $24. That was like 400% gain, right? And then since then to now, months later, like 3/4 of a year later, now at $9, definitely undervalued. Their convertible note, I like what they're doing, although I do think that acquiring Bitcoin is a strategy as well. But I think that their strategy is to increase their mining capacity and increase their HODL through mining at lower fixed costs. So I think because CleanSpark is at rank number 3 with HODL, they're going to use that strategy to catch up with HODL by just energizing their hash rate to combat the difficulty of mining. So overall, I think CleanSpark definitely undervalued. I think there's so much potential here with a company that's just dropped from like $18 to $9 within a matter of like days and weeks. Let's take a look at Mara because I was talking about Mara earlier. So what do we see with Mara here? So hopefully you're able to see the price of Mara on the screen here. But look, back in March timeframe, $34, $34, and then here, mid July, August, hovering up at that $28, and then, you know, November, December time from that $30. We see that retest many times. There's no way for Mara to never reach $30 again. So think about it this way: like, if you're thinking about investing in miners, and if you want to invest in like the biggest Bitcoin miner, the most reputable one, Mara would be it, right? But question is like, will I ever see my money go away? Most likely not, because I think that that $30 retest is very likely, and it may go beyond that. I think, 2025, 2025, it may reach like $40 on a conservative level. We've seen this thing run up to like $80 at one point. So just looking at just the price targets of Mara, I mean, just alone, going back 3 months here, $30, right? $30 here. So imagine buying in at $30 or like a little lower than that. You're like drowning right now because you're basically bag holding, hoping for Mara to get up again 50% in order to offset that price range. But I think even if you did make that mistake of buying at $30, dollar cost average is like the best thing to do right now. I think that's the key to success here. Dollar cost average down, which is what I've been doing. And if you have conviction in whether it's Mara, CleanSpark, Riot, Iron Cores, Bitdeer, Hut 8, Bitfarms, Hive, Bit Digital, consider dollar cost averaging down, especially when the cost is much lower, when the Bitcoin miners have been lagging behind. I think that's when that coil up, to William's point, that's really going to happen. Um, CleanSpark must hodl or it's over for them. Yeah, I agree. I think, whatever you can mine, try to hodl it as much as possible. Of course, companies need to, pay the bills as well. So how you do that, that's going to be a big factor. But just understanding that the Bitcoin price will appreciate over time. How do you continue hodling while running a business? That's going to be up to the executives to make those sound decisions for the sake of adding value to shareholders like us. Yeah, so Coyote, Cores, and Iron, largest positions in the WGMI ETF, 14% each. That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing that context. ETFs, it's interesting that now not only do we have ETFs for Bitcoin, but ETFs for miners as well. And 14% is a big number when it comes to ETFs. When you look at like QQQ, VOO, large scale ETFs, at most you'll have like 10% holding on to like Nvidia stock and all of that, but 14% is like big conviction. So thanks for sharing that ETF WGMI. I appreciate that. Yep, CleanSpark is a no-brainer at this price. Definitely oversold. Those who have been holding on, like me, I'm still remaining calm, just trying to take advantage of the low prices. Mara, CleanSpark, Riot. Eventually, it's going to pop back up, and we'll start patting ourselves on the shoulder with that. So fast trades, dilution is what will kill the runs. So, I appreciate the contrarian perspective. While we have that, the positive perspective, hoping that price increases, one of the risk factors that we always look at is like dilution. And it's quite obvious that dilution is something that we always worry about as an investor. And you're right, dilution is what we hate, I admit. And especially with the miners, we've seen the ATM being used as a way to acquire more money for companies to run their business. Again, though, that doesn't mean that changes the market cap for ATMs, but the goal is for those ATMs to eventually expand and grow its market cap in the long run, although it can hit us when it comes to the share price. Just taking a look at Bitcoin price. So let me just um, just see here. Bitcoin price at 94,744 currently. With the price of Mara, just looking at Mara here, 1 month range, $28. Definitely a steal right now. Mara, I think, as we head into this upcoming week, we only have Thursday, Friday, 2 days of trading. I think how we're seeing price of Bitcoin go currently at like 94,000. I'm thinking that I'm just throwing out a number, but I'm thinking that we're going to be seeing an upward motion with Bitcoin start of like 6:30 Pacific time tomorrow in the morning. If Bitcoin can break through that 96,500, um, then I think Mara is going to start running with it. I think Mara can get up to that 1850 if price of Bitcoin can start running up. It really depends on the speed of it going up, because when Bitcoin starts hovering up, like gapping up, that's when the miners start taking off as well. So I do think that Mara has that ability to just run back up into that 1850 within tomorrow or Friday, especially with the rising price in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, yep, it's hovering now. I mean, much better than 92,000, right, William? I mean, if it's at 92,000, I think that's where the shorters are really going to still, take advantage of MSTR and take advantage of continuing to bring down the miners. But we're in a new year now. I think the money inflows are going to start coming in. Profit takers of like MSTR, they've been holding on. Like those profit takers, either they want to get action getting into quantum computing, but I think there's the smart investors who took profits at the high point for like MSTR. They've been holding on, seeing this bleed out, and wait until the next year, 2025, and start adding back in. And I think the money circulation is going to come into like the miners, for example. Okay, so Eric, would you recommend hopping in Riot calls tomorrow? April 17 expiration, $12 strike. So Eric, as much as I would love to answer that, because I am not an expert in call options or put options, I've never done that before. I've only just acquired shares and sold shares. I don't know how call options and all of that works, like put options. So it's hard for me to tell, but from how I understand, like with calls and puts and all that, it's all based on forecasting with time as to what the price would be before the expiration. But I do think from a non-call option or a non-put option, when it comes to just price appreciation, I think that Riot, where it currently is at like $10, high tens or mid tens, that potential run up, we saw that it went up to like 1550 at one point. um, I think that the retest of $18, it had $18 at one point in 2024, beginning of the year. So I think we're going to see those numbers come again. So I think that overall, from an investment standpoint, Riot has definitely opportunity and value there from my perspective. So I hope that answers questions. I'm not an expert at call options or anything because I've never done it. I'm more comfortable with just buying stocks. So CleanSpark Coyote here, 4.79% allocation in WGMI. Interesting. So you have cores and iron, and then now you have CleanSpark. So I'm going to have to look at that WGMI investment that you shared there because I don't know much about WGMI, but it's interesting that you have ETFs that have a high count on miners. So hopefully everyone can benefit from that there with what Coyote has shared. Okay, so here's a comment from William. Sailor and MSTR will be able to ATM millions of Bitcoin along with other miners like Mara and CleanSpark. They will have the funds, but it will be hard to find the Bitcoin on the open market. So that's right, William. There was an article released, right, from what was it? From Fred Thiel, Mara, a CEO. One of the comments is that on the Bitcoin market right now, there's only like 11% available Bitcoins on the market to purchase. What does that indicate? That Bitcoin, it's harder to get nowadays. And when things get hard to acquire, that's when, you know, supply and demand kicks in. The price is just going to go up. So I think overall, all in all, Sailor, if he's able to get that ATM to buy more Bitcoin, I think we're going to start seeing a bigger load from like Mara, Riot. We also saw other companies like Hut acquire Bitcoin. So that playbook will continue, especially with Trump coming in place. There's going to be some government incentives for that U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. So I think we may see more buying coming into play. So fast trades here, I think we start to rally in February after positive EPS. So I think you bring up a great point. So we have the inauguration January 20th, right? That's going to be a milestone. The shorts are going to be fearful around that time, but they're taking advantage right now of Trump not being in the White House yet. So they have like 3 weeks to continue controlling the market, especially with the downward price of MSTR and Bitcoin showing some degree of uncertainty. But as we look at Bitcoin price, you know, current state, 94,800, I think it's going to be very important to see whether Bitcoin price is going to break through that 96,000 tomorrow. If it can, I think shorts are going to be struck with fear, and MSTR price will go up and the miners will start going up as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think come February, once we start announcing all of the Q4 results, it's quite obvious. I mean, we look at, you know, let me just share. Okay, so just looking at, okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing. Just looking at, you know, just the overall financial results. I think that's important. Okay, I'm just going to reshare my screen here. Yes, of course, Eric. Yep, I appreciate, you know, the comment, and for anyone who's, you know, listening in, I would love, you know, for you to support, you know, just subscribing to this channel, just to be able to get past that 8,000 marker. So that was a big milestone. But you know, let's say if you haven't subscribed yet, you know, I know there's a number of folks here, you know, like JG Lee, you know, William, who've subscribed already. But let's say if you all haven't subscribed, would really appreciate the love with a subscribe. So just financial forecast alone, just looking at the actuals of Mara, for example. So let me see if you're able to see that. Okay, so actuals in Q4 2023, actuals of Q1 of 2024. So we saw consistent positive news from last year's time point back in Q4, which we will get updates this year in February on the Q4 2024 results on the last 3 months of 2024. So we saw here that the actuals outperformed the forecast estimate, along with Q1, just blowing things out of the water. It was up until Q2 2024. So we do know that that was like, the time frame of the halving that took place. So that difficulty kicked in at that time. And that was expected with Q3. Around that Q3 announcement for Mara, I mean, that's when the share price dropped so much, right? Around that September timeframe, July, August, September. So that was expected. Shorters took advantage pre-halving, post-halving, because they knew that the financial data was going to look bad. But we can't just continue seeing that. Miners like Mara realize that there's post-halving events, and for those reasons, they took advantage of bolstering up their hash rate now at 50 exahash. They're able to mine a lot more Bitcoin because of their hash rate capacity, their fleet efficiency. But now, because the price of Bitcoin, all-time high, 108,000, you're mining over like 25 Bitcoins per day. That's like a couple million per day just with the amount of Bitcoin they're able to mine per day. So because price of Bitcoin is up and their hash rate is up, that revenue is just going to be, much higher. So the revenue will definitely offset the cost expenditures on the cost of mining Bitcoin, and for those reasons, earnings per share. So here, estimate is minus 24 cents. I think we're gonna see a blue dot above the orange estimate for sure. Yep, you're right. It just talks about. Okay, so just catching up with the comments here. So I'm confident that Mara will see $100 by year end. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes beyond $100. That would be great. Seeing MSTR going like in the $500. Why can't Mara do the same, right? I mean, they're number one for a reason. So here's a question: why doesn't MSTR buy a large miner like Mara? So to William's point, there's been a lot of back and forth with Mara and MSTR. I think Michael Saylor and Fred Thiel, they've been having dinners together and all of that, and there's potential for them to kind of partner up. Who knows? Um, is it that MSTR is trying to get this ATM in place so that they can have the amount of shares to acquire Mara? If that happens, Mara can potentially just run up. So that's another upside there. Now we're looking at MSTR, just price point here, just year to date. So, just looking at how well they perform, just from a 1 year chart, $43 beginning of January. And then all of a sudden they ran all the way up to like $543. One of the best stocks, like, this ran up faster than like Nvidia, for example. But during that time point of that Citron news, it's been just on a downward, consistent trend here. 289. Will it continue to go down? All of that is dependent on the price of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin can break through that 96,000 tomorrow, I think shorts are going to start covering. We can see that U shape or V shape go back up for the price of MSTR. So here, question: CleanSpark said that they will sell Bitcoin when they think the market tops, and then they will buy back in. What are your thoughts on that? So I think they're they're using that realistic strategy similar to what all of us are doing, right? We're trying to have that laser sharp focus, try to pinpoint when there's value. Of course, CleanSpark realizes that, Bitcoin mining isn't going away. They're looking at it from the lens of like the long-term game. They know that Bitcoin many years from now will be in the millions of dollars. But I think what they're trying to do is to capitalize on value. If they can sell Bitcoin at a high cost, buy low, sell high, that's only going to allow for them to make more gains. But then just thinking about what investors would think if, let's say, they make the wrong move, that becomes a question of credibility. But I think that's a great strategy, you know selling if they can, because ultimately they have the money. They can just buy back in, what they just sold at a higher cost. They can buy back in to acquire more Bitcoin. So it doesn't mean that their HODL count is going to be depleted. They can always use that money to just reacquire again. So here, RIP insiders were selling back in November around $30 price. If you check the insider transactions, what are you referring to there, RIP? Would love to hear more about that. So if MSTR acquires Mara, how would that work? Would it be better to be in Mara or MSTR at time of acquisition? So great question. I think if that does actually come into fruition, let's say if there's going to be news about those two companies synergizing together as one entity, I think it would be better being in Mara, because the company that gets acquired, you have to attract the holders of that company. So people who have shares of that company, they have to get something from something, right? The something for MSTR is that they're able to acquire Mara, but what's going to be in return for the stockholders of Mara? Well, it has to be, at a higher cost average. So for that reason, it'd be better to be in Mara if that acquisition were to happen. And I've seen that happen across, like medical device companies and all of that as well, where, big Titan medical device companies acquiring, smaller companies, and those smaller companies, the share price just runs all the way up. So you actually gain as a shareholder. So to a Coyote's point, MSTR could easily acquire a 9 billion company. Oh yeah, definitely. Considering like, MSTR being in the multiples of billions. So RIP, referring to Mara executives, yes, we do see that across the board with miners. Like we see insider transactions going on, but just keeping in mind that it's the percent that each executive owns. I would be more worried if the executive sells like their whole entire amount that they own, right? But they're just shedding off a few percentages, just so that they can, live their life a bit. So that's all expected from the executive level. Maybe they have that set for every year at a specific time point, to just take some money out. But I would be more worried if if it's a substantial amount that they're transacting out of what they own. Okay, so let me know what other questions you guys have here. If you guys want to look at specific charts, but overall, just MSTR. I don't know if you guys are holding on to MSTR or not, but I think current price at 289. If the price of Bitcoin continues to show some uncertainty, like if, let's say, Bitcoin goes back down to like 92,000, where we saw like the last couple of days, it goes from like 91, 92,000, then to 94,000, then it drops back down the same day. then I think the shorts will continue taking advantage of MSTR, and that price will just continue going down. I think the lowest would be somewhere around 250, 220 range. But depending on price of Bitcoin, if it can go up, now we're seeing it close to 95,000. I think we're in a good state where we could see MSTR start climbing back up. So let's see. So here, I'm guessing the total market cap of all public miners is less than the market cap of MSTR. Coyote, yep, you're correct. If you like add up all the market caps of the miners, I think it'll be like a little more than half, but not up to the level of what MSTR has right now. They're the king of the Bitcoin company right now, since they have like, close to 500,000 Bitcoins. The only miner that's even close to that is Mara, which they have like 10% of what MSTR has. However, keep in mind that Mara can also mine Bitcoin at a fixed cost. Yeah, that's a good point. MSTR, I think right now it's going to be more difficult too, because Mara executives, they know like, hey, recently our share price just dropped down, so market cap is much lower. So if you're going to buy me out, I'm going to expect a premium. So that premium payout will result in the rising share price, which is why it makes more sense for you being in Mara than MSTR if an acquisition does happen. But let's say if you're not focusing in on that acquisition, whether having MSTR and Mara can add value. I think that MSTR overall, from a fundamental standpoint, because they have so much Bitcoin on their balance sheet, that's really going to help the US strategic Bitcoin reserve, and that's going to really allow for them to just catapult up. But whether Bitcoin price takes some time for it to go up, that's all going to come into play as well. Okay, so here now is definitely the time for MSTR to acquire Mara. And then JG Lee, MSTR will not acquire Mara. Their stock will tank 50% on the news. So MSTR price target 900 this cycle. We've seen how crazy MSTR has run up. And just looking at seasonality, let me just kind of pull something up. I wanted to show you all what I'm noticing as I'm analyzing, MSTR, for example. This is tough. Okay, so MSTR price target of $900. So that's a tasty number, but I'm thinking, we gotta see a retest to 550. I think January, February, we might see that retest, but I think until it breaks through that 380 zone, 400 range come January, depending on how price of Bitcoin reacts and goes up. Because I'm forecasting 120, 130,000 price of Bitcoin, we can see that retest of 550. And if it goes over that 108,000 all-time high, definitely see that 600 barrier be broken through. And that 900 price target, that's a tough one, but I'd say it's not impossible. Okay, so what other questions do you guys have? Um, we've, I think we've gone close to about 2 hours here, but I just wanted to just get, your overall kind of perspective on, how this first live went on. I know initially I wasn't able to get the audio working and I got the black screen, but it was just a matter of just, you know, uh, getting more familiar with how the live stream works. But let me know what your thoughts are. Like, how was this experience? Did you guys enjoy it? What can be done differently here? What would you guys like to see in this live Q&A here? I've been researching just Bitcoin miners, MSTRs on the daily, and anything that I find that's new information, I try to communicate it back. Um, and again, thanks William for nudging me to get a live stream going. It was until I got your comment. I think that it really made me feel like I should get this done. It's the new year. Why not just get it started, even if one person shows up? But it looks like there's quite a few people here showing up and just sharing insight, collaborating. So I thought that it was great. JG Lee here. Live stream is good. You'll build your audience up this way. Thanks for the comment. I appreciate it, JG. Along with all of the comments you've been leaving on the YouTube videos. I think you've been a support throughout, so just really appreciate you just showing some love on this channel. And thank you, Coyote Log Homes, with that comment. I think overall, like with everyone here joining, I mean, if you're not subscribed, it would be awesome for you to subscribe to this channel. I think that will just really help me continue to grow. I know that I'm still like a small YouTube channel, but I'm just really doing it because I find it so fun and interesting just researching this sector, and just like to share back to everyone. And of course, I don't know everything. I'm no expert. It's all of you that have that insight as well. So I'm learning a lot just getting all of this information from everyone with like ETFs, just with forecasting on certain stocks and where we're headed. What are the milestones that we're going to be hitting? But can't wait until tomorrow's live. So hopefully I'll be able to get a live going. I mean, it's pretty fun. I enjoy it versus just I'd love to just make consistent videos and then just do a live and then just get feedback from everyone. Um, but hopefully we can continue to learn more from one another. But just let me know if there's any other questions that you guys have here. What's your, so if I were to ask you, like, okay, so what, for all the listeners right now, so what is your top stock for 2025 is? Like, which company or commodity, whether it's Bitcoin or an altcoin, what commodity do you have most conviction in? Okay, so Willem, I know you're a Mara support here, definitely. So give a half-hour notice so viewers line up in queue for your stream. Interesting. So I'll have to figure out how I do that. Like, but that's a good. How do you get notice as to when the stream is going to be live? Like, do I put a post? I'll have to research that. Like, just giving people heads up notice in advance when it's going to happen. Go to YouTube and ask. That's true. Okay, Coyote, Log Homes, Core Scientific, and Cardano. Cardano is a sleeping giant for sure. I definitely think Cardano is one to consider. I'm also looking at altcoins as well. At one point, I was an investor of like Stellar Lumens XLM. I got out of it, and look at what happened with XLM. It's been dormant for years, and just recently, low 6 cents, ran up to like 50 cents. Uh, ask Chat GPT how to do anything. It knows. Yeah, I mean, it types better than like humans now. So it's pretty impressive there. But what other commodities do you have conviction in? Do you What's your favorite miner? Like, which miner do you think has the most upside? So we've heard from William Mara, all in with Mara here. What else? Are there anyone that believes in CleanSpark, Riot? We have Core Scientific here with Coyote, but what else from others? What do you guys believe in? Wolf. Yeah, there's been recent news on Wolf with their overall AI partnership. How about MSTR? Are there any MSTR investors here who believe in MSTR making a big run in 2025? What are your thoughts? Okay, hi everyone. I'm back now. For some reason, the one moment, I'm getting a little hot. I'm just going to take my sweater off. All right, so Mr. Gary, so I have 20K in it. So 20K in which play? So William, MSCR ran already. More money to be made with Mara. So I am definitely in alignment with you there. What is your cost average, Mr. Gary? If you don't mind sharing. Current state MSTR at 289. I think all the shorters are trying to like hope for a reduction in Bitcoin price, but where we're seeing Bitcoin go up, I mean, one day change, they're up by less than 1.5%, hovering at close to 95,000. If we can see Bitcoin break through that 96,000 barrier, I think MSTR is going to start running back up. 350. I think you're in a good state, even though it's at 289 dollar cost average. If you have conviction in MSTR, and of course, my information is always guidance. You do your research and all that. But 350, I think we're going to see that retest. Of course, 350, high 380s, perhaps breaking through that 400 zone. Very possible. So here, Jason, largest holding is Riot. So it's interesting, and I appreciate you sharing your experience with the big three miners. So we have Mara as part of the big three. We have Riot, big three, and we have CleanSpark as big three. I call them the big three miners because one, they have a high hodl. Two, they mine at a high capacity. That's why I call them the big three. But because Jason Vervek, so what are your thoughts with Riot? How high do you think Riot can go? So CleanSpark mines only 2/3 of what Mara mines. So it'll be interesting to see what the mining data shows in. I think at the earliest we may get some updates, whether it's tomorrow or even Friday, on any miners that will announce their production data, because technically December has ended as of yesterday. So we may hear some news on mining production data for December. Core Scientific, 75% of portfolio. That's big conviction there. Core Scientific, I mean, they have a solid platform using NVIDIA devices. So I think that you're in for a good run. Mara is at 50 exahash. CleanSpark is somewhere around 35. I think they're at 37. They just announced 37 recently. End of year, I think their target for first half for this year is 50 exahash, and they're using that convertible note to scale up their operations, using that money to to revamp their fleet efficiency and to scale up on their operations to get to what Mara is currently doing. But by then, Mara's exahash would go up even more. I would take it. All right. So here, Jason's insight here is I believe both Riot and CleanSpark could reach $35 per share. I think so too. I think there's that potential to get up to that price. A lot of people are saying, how can it? Miners are doing so bad right now. And I think it's obvious that there's been a lot of market manipulation going on, but I don't think that's going to continue as we are in a new year. Um, the manipulation may likely just kind of end. But to William's point, I think a lot of these miners are definitely behind Mara, right? I think everything is relative. Um, IWM, what is IWM if you don't mind me asking? Yeah, and Coyote, I think that's the biggest point here, right? Bitcoin, let me just overall share the price of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin price, we're looking at current Bitcoin price, where it currently is. Just looking at it from a 1 year range, we saw at one point February, it was like at that low point of like 40,000. At most it ran up by about 100% in gains, right? And it's much more stable, I would say, than investing in like what we're invested in with like the miners. It's only gained like over 100% from like a year to year perspective. Miners, on the other hand, like the big three miners, when you look at it from an annual performance, down by like 30%. So because we see underperformance in miners and overperformance with Bitcoin, you see here 109%. I think miners have that potential to like 3 to 5x because of that volatility that we see with the miners. But overall, Bitcoin is a commodity that's much more stable than like investing in the miners. If you have that stomach for volatility, you can expect faster losses in mining, but you can expect faster run-ups with miners. So I do agree, Coyote. Miners do have a 3x over Bitcoin at least. So here we see the data, right? 110% for the year, but miners are like 30% down for the year, at least for the big name miners. So I think with seasonal trends, we should see the miners perform in the upcoming 2025 here. Okay, so Russell 2000 ETF. So I do follow Russell 2000s because, especially with Trump too, now in place, I do think just overall Russell 2000 is going to outperform. Separate topic, I think small caps, Russell 2000, it hasn't even got to its high point yet. It's so undervalued compared to like S&P 500. I think that because Trump is in now, it's really going to help the small businesses and the small cap companies. I think Russell 2000 is going to outperform like the S&P 500. Separate topic, but I think IWM is definitely going to run up as well because it's basically the Russell 2000. So Jason, oh yes, I appreciate your comment. I'm really enjoying the live chat. Thanks for all the great miner coverage. And of course, I don't know so much about all of this. I'm just researching as much as everyone is. So I think we're all learning as we go. There may be some experts in here that know a lot more than others, but I think it's an opportunity for us to all collaborate and share information on what we think has upside, what doesn't. And of course, if you don't have conviction in something, would welcome those comments as well. So William here. So I know I sound like a Mara fanboy, but these are just facts. CleanSpark might not hodl, but I'm not okay with that. If you don't hodl Bitcoin, you will not compete. So William, I think you bring up a great point, and I saw comments about this, which is a valid point, right? Top number one, top number two hodl companies, Mara, Riot, follow the MSTR playbook. They're doing what the Bitcoin Titan company is doing. CleanSpark, they're taking an alternative approach, not going with that playbook of MSTR. They're relying on their mining capacity. Um, the downside is that because they're not in that top number one, top number two hodler, they're racing to get to number three, and how they're going to take that number three lead, passing Hut 8, would be increasing their energized fleet efficiency. So I think all of that really comes into to play. But I see your point there about just the hodling perspective. I think hodl is going to be a very important factor in the year 2025, which we haven't seen yet in 2024. What is consensus for MSTR share price by end of year 2025? So thank you, Alicia, for joining. I appreciate you joining the live chat here. So as for MSTR share price by end of the year, so that's going to be tough. But what I'm going to say is, because it's hard for me to tell like how the dynamics will be, right at that end point, end of year 2025. But I do think that achievable price ranges that MSTR will reach, all dependent on what we're seeing here, right? On price of Bitcoin. I think what we have to factor in. So I'm just going to stop sharing and then just reshare this very important um, visual depiction that I think will really add value to your perspective. So what you're seeing here is the overall like rainbow visual of Bitcoin's price chart indicator. So why is this so important? I think it's important because it gives us an understanding of how Bitcoin has performed and behaved over the last bull run cycles, along with the halving dates. So you see on the legend halving dates is that vertical line there. So every bull run is spaced out over time from that halving date. You see here, there's 4 halvings that took place. You see 4 vertical lines, right? Where we currently are, April was that halving date. So we've only been pushed out a couple months. But when you look at the previous halving vertical lines, those bullish runs were spaced out significantly. So we're still in a premature state of the Bitcoin bull run, which is why 2025 Bitcoin bull price, I'm forecasting that along with other analysts. Some are saying 200,000 and all that, even more. But I really think that the most realistic topping point would be like somewhere around the range of like 120, 130,000 on a conservative piece. But who knows, it can go beyond that, especially with so much game theory going on with the dynamics of countries hodling up Bitcoin now. I mean, Russia talking about it. You look at countries, which countries have the most Bitcoin? The United States has the most Bitcoin. Who's number two? Which country is that? That's China. So is Trump really going to have China have more Bitcoin? No way, because why? He knows that in order to have a leverage against China, an economic power over China is to have much more Bitcoin, which is why he's implementing that United States strategic Bitcoin reserve. And that's why companies like MSTR, North American Bitcoin miners, will really come into play here. Okay, so, to answer your question, Alicia, end of year, I don't know what the end of year price is for MSTR, but I think because we saw just taking this factor in with the overall accumulation phase, we haven't broken out to the HODL, is this a bubble, FOMO intensifies yet. The more of the story is that we're still in that accumulation phase with the current Bitcoin bull cycle, but I think what I wanted to point out here is just looking at MSTR's overall price targets. We saw that it reached 543, right? And it was bad news when Citron started shorting MSTR around that time frame of like mid-November. Currently at 289, so Bitcoin, if it goes up, the shorts are really going to have to cover. But I think come Q1 of this year, the next 2 months, January, February, I think that we can see that retest into the 550 range. And if it can break through that 550 range, depending on new all-time highs with Bitcoin, we're going to see that 620 barrier range, I think, is where I think that point is 620. I may be on a conservative level, but just seeing that drop off of close to 50% from that all-time high of 543, currently at 289, there's a potential to 620 is my forecast. I don't know when that will happen in 2025, but that's overall like assessment for me. And I think that there's different forecasts in this chat here where it can go up to 900. So who knows? Think of MSTR as like Nvidia. Nvidia is like dominant in AI. MSTR is dominant in Bitcoin. So they've created a monopoly basically. So I hope that answers your question, Alicia. And thanks for joining the live chat here. So just going down here on comments, Coyote CleanSpark has over 7,000 in HODL. I think Coyote CleanSpark has more than that. Oh, and it looks like JD answered it here. So thank you, JD, for pointing out the latest and greatest information when it comes to a HODL count here. Just again to share with you all the overall HODL count. And again, this is like fairly old information. This doesn't factor in the recent information. So this will kind of give you a spectrum overview of where the miners are at in terms of Bitcoin holdings. Mara, according to like X, Mara has about 44,000 Bitcoin. So they're like number one here. And then Riot, they've announced that they're over like 17,000, mid 17,000s, like a couple weeks ago. So this is fairly outdated. CleanSpark, I think they're like at 10,000, and I think that's what JD noted here. And again, back in November, CleanSpark mined 922 Bitcoins. That was before energizing their hash rate up to 37 exahash, which was their December 31st target. They did that like 2 weeks before, but they're going to get their exahash to like 50 in the first half of this year. So I think CleanSpark is really going to ramp up. My guess is that they're ranked number 3 now. Hut 8, they bought more Bitcoin, 100 million Bitcoin, but I think CleanSpark, because they mine a lot more per month, they're at that HODL number 2. And just recently, they got exchanged from Coinbase. CleanSpark got an additional 1,200 Bitcoins. So I think current HODL number is over 10,000 for CleanSpark. Yep. So I think TradingView 1 year price target for MSTR is 550. It's going to go up way higher, much higher. I mean, especially if it can drop 50% within like a couple weeks, it can definitely run back up. So I think 550 is definitely conservative. William here, China is very close to US in their Bitcoin hodl. Yes, I agree 100%, which is why Trump is trying to create that disparity, like a marathon digital MSTR disparity, get that hodl count up so that America can be number one in that hodl count, remain at number one with a big disparity. Okay, and then Coyote here, our growth and efficiency have resulted in a Bitcoin treasury quickly approaching 10,000, all of which we have mined. Yep, you're right there. So I definitely appreciate the context there. So somewhere I do recall that it's around that 10,000 range or close to it. And then JG Lee here, MSTR try to fill the weekly gap. That's a big deal. All miners must purchase Bitcoin on the open market and ATM. That's I think that's an important note here. Crypto investor. So what price does CleanSpark need to hit to produce a squeeze? Okay, so that's a great question. Thanks for asking that question. So let me just pull up, just going to pull up CleanSpark's charts here and take a look. Okay, so I'm just going to shift gears here, get to a new screen, and then take a look at CleanSpark data. So to the question, crypto investor, what price does CleanSpark need to hit to produce a short squeeze? All right, so we're looking at CleanSpark here, just from like January through July through December. So the recent months of 2024, we saw that November timeframe, around that time when we heard about the news, who's going to be the next president. Bitcoin miners did really well. Things started running up. But during that time frame of September, things were like at the basement low. So now with CleanSpark, again at the basement low, where it was before at $8, where it currently is at low $9. I think that short squeeze can happen very soon. I think it's all dependent on the price of Bitcoin. Currently, Bitcoin is like flirting with 95,000. If we can see that 96,000, I think we're going to see some price action tomorrow. A lot of investors are going to start circulating their money. They see the value in the miners being undervalued, along with plays like MSTR, right, bleeding out 50%. I think investing in MSTR in the 200 range is much better than being in the 500 range, for example, right? So I think there's going to be that bounce back that we anticipate seeing. And the short squeeze, I'm thinking if we can see CleanSpark like run up, like I think if CleanSpark makes a big reversal pattern in Thursday, Friday, let's say if it breaks through that, getting up to like that 1050, I think fear factor is going to kick in for the shorts. If we see like a big green stick candle for the next couple of days here for a CleanSpark, I really don't think that it's going to continue bleeding out. Who knows if Bitcoin price drops down to like 92, 91,000, like at the start of the stock market open tomorrow, shorters are going to take advantage. But just looking at the stability of Bitcoin. Now that we're into 2025, I think that we're seeing some appreciation, and just keeping in mind that Bitcoin dropped from 108 to like 91,000. So that's like nearly 20% in reduction. But we're seeing some consolidation here. Hopefully that consolidation means it's going up. And once we see that reverse trend pattern with Bitcoin, keeping in mind that we saw that rainbow chart with Bitcoin, it's still at that accumulation. It hasn't broken out yet. CleanSpark has the potential to get into that $12 range. I think, once we see that $12 point for CleanSpark, then that's really going to change that momentum signal, where we're going to see that RSI kick back up for CleanSpark. Once we see that RSI get up to about 55, 60 point range, I think CleanSpark is really going to start running up, getting back up to that retest of like $18 from what we saw back in November. So I hope that answers your question about a short squeeze there. So Alicia, enjoy the journey and lessons along the way, not just getting to the end destination. Yeah, of course. I think a lot of us, we have that mindset is like, okay, what will the price be at the end of the year? I think we should look at it as, will MSTR be able to retest what it just reached? If yes, then, if you do believe that, then let's say if you have the propensity to make a certain percentage, you can set your limit there, right? Sell your shares at the time point when it reaches that target versus like it at the end of the year. But it all depends on your risk tolerance, your investment strategy. If you're the type where you make trades, after a couple years, or like you do things differently towards the end of the year, it all depends. So everyone has different playbooks. So I think, just factoring in all variables is important. So JD here, 9,297 for CleanSpark. My guess is those are shares. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. Those are Bitcoin reserves. Yep. 9,000 for CleanSpark, 44,000 for Mara, 17,000 HODL for Riot. Yep. JD's done his research here. I think those are some valid numbers there. But I think in the next couple of days, those numbers are going to go up. I think for CleanSpark, it's going to go over that 10,000 like in a matter of days here. Okay, Adrian, do you think we'll see Mara hit $23 within the next 30 days? Asking for a friend. So current price of Mara being at $16. So what do we see in the last 30 days? So just looking at CleanSpark, the last 30 days, it was like at $18. Now at $9, it dropped by 50%. So I think it has that potential to go up 100% in that regard. Similar trajectory with Mara. Mara was like at $30 30 days ago, and now it's like halfway. It's $16. So I definitely do think that that $23 is very achievable in the next 30 days for sure. And here, Mara to go up before February 10th. I think there's a lot of positive news coming out, with the inauguration in January, Q4 results happening around February timeframe. There's going to be a lot of things that are really going to be in favor of the Bitcoin companies. Yeah, 3 days to cover shorts CleanSpark. It's do or die for me. So that's interesting. Alter. So you found William here, who's a big time Mara supporter here as well. And then can we chat Mara for a few? Yes, of course, definitely. Let me just change gears here and sort of switch charts to Mara. I think it's important to see the Mara charts. Just looking at Mara, I mean, just from a fundamentals aspect, Mara, they're doing everything right now. For 900 bitcoins per month, they have the most amount of bitcoins, right, out of all the miners. They have the highest percentage when it comes to institutional investors. They have multiple global sites all around the world, so that just shows their ability to expand all across the globe. And they're also tapping into renewable energy using, like, they just acquired a site in Texas, wind farms. So a lot of positive news with Mara, even though we've seen a downward trajectory. So here, let's take a look at Bitcoin. Thank you, Coyote. You have a good night. Okay, we'll talk again soon. Okay, so just looking at Mara here, yeah, and I definitely do think altcoins are ramping up again. We saw XLM, have some positive light. XRP today. Altcoins, I think, are going to run. Miners are going to run. We're looking very good. Bitcoin, what I'm seeing, William, is like it's sub 95,000. It hasn't broken out yet. But here, looking at Mara charts, okay, so we're looking at a 6-month chart here. So back in, not too long ago, around July, before August, it had that $27 range. And then, come early November, $26. And then it had that recent sell off to like $17. And what happened? Boom, all the way up to $30. And then how long has it been bleeding out for? For one whole month now, right? I think Mara definitely undervalued. People are like, oh, the price dropped down so much, the stock sucks and all that. But most people don't realize that you can only win in this market when you buy low and sell high. Um, um, that's basically the bottom line. But I think whenever there's fear on Wall Street, people don't take advantage of that. And for those reasons, it really just becomes more of a risk when you buy when things are running up. Buying now at $16 is much better than when it's at like, $25, for example. Alter here, bro. I was up 200% on Mara, around $30. I only sold 20% of my portfolio. Hey, well, the good thing is you actually sold some, right? So kudos to you. You had a strategy going on and you capitalized on that strategy. But, will it be able to get back to 30? No question. I definitely think that, it will get back up to $30. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to, answer one more question. I think my voice is beginning to break out here and I got to have some dinner, but I hope that, overall this live stream, hopefully you all enjoyed it. If, let's say you're new, would love your subscribe. I really appreciate all the information sharing. But just, one last question, if you have, any question, is it with tomorrow's price action? What type of video would you like to see? Of course. Yep. Thank you for all just joining in. But any video that you would like a deep dive analysis on. So here, cycle high for Mara, this bull run. So some people are saying, like William, is thinking that it can get up to $100. So that's an answer I'm sharing based on William's feedback there. So thank you, NPR, for the live stream. Happy 2025 to everyone. Yes, happy 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. Hopefully this will be a year full of an abundance of joy with gratefulness for everyone. And let's make it a grateful year where we all can, just gain on positive proceeds and lead with an altruistic mindset. So that's what alliseeisW is all about. It's gaining on positive proceeds and leading with an altruistic mindset. So hopefully you get the branding and the purpose behind it. Cycle high thoughts on CleanSpark. So the cycle high for CleanSpark, I think, the cycle high for CleanSpark, earlier there were some comments about, Riot and CleanSpark having that potential to break through like the around the mid $35 range. So I think cycle high, we can see, the mid 30s break from a moderate conservative perspective on that. Please do research on the US government to us miners energy credit. Yeah, that's a great point, Van Hexus. Yep. So that's that's the bottom line. There's going to be energy credits. And of course, there's going to be these big time companies like Amazon, web-based service. We see Microsoft partnering up with C3 AI, for the AI partnership. We hear about speculation with Hut 8 and Meta working together. So I think a lot of this is going to come into fruition heading into 2025, where the US Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, these companies with like massive power, energy, wattage capacity, these big name companies are looking for these hidden gem facilities, similar to like Riot with the Corsicana facility, to really tap into that facility to support with the AI cloud-based service. Mara will top, but by the way, 38 to 46 in my opinion. I think CleanSpark will top out early 30s. Yeah, so I think Mara has more of that push up because they're a more mature company. CleanSpark, I think that mid 30s is reasonable. Mara, I think top out, you know, William is saying like 100, 50 to 100, right? My assessment is 50. If we couple that with William, 100, that's where we can see Mara land. And again, miners have underperformed in 2024. What does that mean? 2025 will be a performing year. All right. So, any last minute questions here? We've gone over like close to like, 2 hours and 40 minutes here. I really enjoyed this live stream here. I hope that you all did as well. Let's just, uh, see if there's one last question. So one last question, and then we can call it a night. Good night, man. I appreciate you joining. So Alter, let's just say that I have the big three. I'm in the big three. So if that gives you some context of where I am, I believe in the big three. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for joining. Happy New Year. This was a great turnout here. And if you all are new to this channel, please, again, would love your support and, of course, your ongoing support. Let's just make this a great year. Would love the subscribe. And again, thank you, William, for that kind gesture. And thank you everyone for just sharing your perspective and making it a collaborative live session here. Okay, and yep, to the moon. Let's hope for the best. Okay, for finances, for our mental, physical health, and just having 2025 be a great year for everyone. Okay, all right. Thank you guys, and you all have a great night, and we'll talk again. Appreciate you all just joining in here.